season, stock up on high-quality ingredients at an amazing value when you shop in-store or online at Rayleigh's.com. This week, you can get our California-raised USDA choice Rayleigh's boneless London broil from Harris Ranch for only $3.97 a pound. And you can grab our fresh jumbo artichokes for just $1.97 each. Discover fantastic savings store-wide on all of your holiday essentials at Rayleigh's and Bel Air.
You like getting an amazing deal on awesome internet. That's why there's never been a better time to switch to Xfinity. So get the fast and reliable internet that you deserve for just $19.99 a month for 12 months with a 1-year contract. And don't miss out. Ask how to get 12 times the speed for the same price when you add Xfinity Mobile. Just imagine faster downloads, more streaming. The possibilities are endless. That's more speed, and you'll save hundreds over AT&T. So what are you waiting for? Sign up now because you deserve awesome internet. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and autopay. Ends December 21st, 2021. Equipment taxes, fees extra and subject to change. After term, regular rates apply. Compares monthly service charge to Xfinity 600 megabits per second. To AT&T 500 megabits per second. Each with one unlimited mobile line for a year. That's at October 6, 2021. Reduced speeds after 20 gigabits of mobile usage.
Wesley is a truck driver.
I drive a truck and I love what I do.
A truck driver with IRS troubles.
They told me I owed them $43,000.
It got really bad.
Quite a few letters in the mail. They were talking about wage charging me, coming out to my house, my car. Yeah, they don't play around. I seriously thought that I was going to lose everything.
One sleepless night, Wesley finally made a call to Optima Tax Relief at 2 a.m.
Kind of figured I'd get a machine, but I didn't. I actually got to talk to an actual person in the middle of the night.
He found just what he was looking for.
Oh, they were great people. You need a team of people that know what they're doing. Optima Tax, they know what they're doing.
Optima Tax Relief came through with flying colors.
I saved an incredible amount of money. I had to go and come close. I was absolutely overjoyed.
Take Wesley's advice.
If you're in any kind of trouble with the IRS, call Optima Tax Relief. Don't trust anybody else.
Call Optima for a free consultation. Call 800-375-2922. 800-375-2922. 800-375-2922.
So we decided to sing about it.
Get your strong for your South Pole. Charmin keeps you undies whiter than the North Pole. Shiny, hiney, a brand new year. Call it us, Charmin. Happy New Year. May your holiday blazes, Charmin, clean, merry, and bright. May all your undies be Charmin clean white.
Charmin Ultra Strong just cleans better. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
The People's Choice Awards, hosted by Kenan Thompson, is the only award show chosen by you, the people. So let Kenan hear you.
With nominees in every category.
TV,
movies, music,
pop culture,
and performances from your favorite artists.
Christina Aguilera,
Blake Shelton,
cool surprises,
plus huge icon award winners.
Halle Berry,
Dwayne Johnson, Kim Kardashian West,
Big
C Sports.
Hosted by me, Kenan Thompson. The People's Choice Awards, live tonight on NBC and E. And the red carpet starts first, live from E.
Festivals, football, the great outdoors. Some people say fall is the best time of year. It may also be a great time to consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
Every time I go in the back to get wiper blades, I trip over a dusty crate of Honda air filters, then bang my head on some GTO radiator hoses. eBay Motors never has that problem. They stock all the right parts at the right prices. 122 million of them, with everything from new headlights to vintage gear shifters. I can't imagine being able to stock 122 million parts. I mean, where would I get all those shelves? eBay Motors. Let's ride.
Hello, this is Discover, and we take customer service very seriously. We know that if you have a question or concern about your credit card, that's a serious matter, and you need to talk to a real person about it. So we offer around-the-clock access to seriously talented representatives in the USA. Again, it's a serious endeavor. The only funny thing about it is Bob. If you call us and Bob answers, you're in for a treat. Get 100% US-based customer service and talk to a real person day or night. Discover. Exceptionally common sense.
Hey, Tungus, have you heard about the new AM/PM Coffee Club? It does. If you join the coffee club on the AM/PM app, every fifth cup is free.
AM/PM giving away coffee?
No, they gotta get the app.
You get a coffee? You get a coffee?
You have to buy 4
You get a coffee! Everybody get a coffee!
Reward yourself. Join the coffee club with the AM/PM app, and every fifth cup is free. AM/PM, too much good stuff.
Let's get ready to rumble! welcome to the show. My name is Charlton of Big C Sports. This is Charlton of Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe. According to everybody who loves sports is all fair and love awards. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, just tell them that Charlton of Big C Sports sent you. Also, all around the world, you are now followed on 19 podcast applications. Give that some praise. Big C Sports Podcast on 19 podcast applications. Man, I got to exercise to catch my breath. #1, Google Podcast, Alexa Podcast, Spotify, Speaker, Apple Podcast, iHeart-Radio Podcast, Castbox Podcast, Deezer Podcast, Podcast Addict, Pod Chaser. Man, I at least made it halfway around the track. I got to catch my breath now. Give me some praise for just getting halfway around the track. You try running halfway around the track. Everybody knows what time it is, if that makes sense to you. #11, Geo Savon Podcast. #12, Podtail, YouTube Podcast, Hubhopper, Stitcher Podcast, Radio Online, WePod Podcast, Luminary Podcast, and the 19th podcast platform is now called Listen Notes. Give that some praise. Big C Sports Podcast. 19 podcast applications all over the universe. You can also find us on 4 TV applications from Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Woo! Give that some praise. Give TV some praise too. Getting closer and closer to a lot more things happening in the world of Big C Sports Podcast. Really do appreciate the growth that we're having. Love giving homage to my family legacy. Mamo, my great-grandmother, on my mother's side, just a wonderful person, kept the family together. My great-grandfather, Pop, one of the best moonshine makers in the history of the universe. And then also well-known for saying, boy, get out of that barn. You know, get out of that barn. I've heard that a lot of times. Like, why we got to get out of the barn again? Get out of the barn again. And then also kept the family strong together. My grandmother, Madia, a seer, very savvy business person. Really do appreciate everything I learned from her when I was a young boy. And then my grandfather, Hezekiah, another great person, doing everything to keep the family strong. My beautiful mother helped start a Head Start program in Northern California and helped win the Little League Championship of the universe. Give that some praise. A beautiful black woman started the Head Start program and winning the Little League Championship of the universe. And can you believe it? Some parents said, I would never listen to one of them. She said, they quit. It's so fair and level war. I really do appreciate it. On my father's side, my grandfather, the patriarch of the family, called him Albert Curry, the pastor on 2 service stations in Oakland, California, 2 churches, and then built the 3rd church in Central California. My grandmother, Alberta Curry, made sure that he did everything he could with the churches and also with the servicing of the service station, doing everything to keep their family strong. And then my father, a retired Air Force fighter pilot and chief mechanic, he could fly high to keep us all safe at night. My beautiful brother Todd, with his bombastic voice, kind of sound like thunder and lightning. Really do appreciate that. I love every show. My son Malcolm, he's all over the NBA, sends me NBA stats, knows everything inside and out about the NBA. And my daughter Daisy would help me with stats. Also, when college coaches would come to the West Coast, she would help me set up those events. And then Big C, with his wealth of knowledge, give him all some praise. Really appreciate everything that's poured in the Big C Sports Podcast. I love doing the show. Love it very much. And that's why I love saying, let's get ready to rumble! I heard that before Bruce Buffer did it. I heard that a lot in my family. Let's get ready to rumble! Time to rise and shine. Nominated Big C Sports Podcast. Now, think about it when I say that. No scripts, no teleprompters, no producer in my ear. I do the show with my higher self. And then I also produce the show. I direct the topics. I broadcast every show. I do all the sound effects that are provided by the agency. Really do appreciate that. As well as time to ring the doorbell. It's time to go to school. It's all that stuff. And then I do the commercials outside of what's done on the pre-roll with the agency out of New York City. I provide the stats. I do the storytelling. I do the play-by-play. Steph Curry, 4-3. We're going to cover up some NBA power rankings later in the show today. And then I upload the show to the platform. But now it goes out to 19 podcast applications all over the universe. Appreciate that. Been doing Big C Sports ever since September the 12th, 2015. Started with Salem Media and never missed a show. I think I'm the only sports show in the history of the universe that honors God on every show. The book of Genesis chapter 13, 15 said, for all the land that thou seest will I give you, and thy seed forever in the book of James 4:2 said we have not because we ask not. So if you want something to just ask, the answer is always yes or no. Oftentimes it's more no than yes. All you need is one yes. That's what Tyler Perry said. You only need one yes. One yes to have your dreams come true. That's why I'm always being very grateful that I get a yes every morning that I wake up. You know, we have this thing going on where President Biden has told Vladimir Putin, knock it off. I mean, we don't want to have any type of issues. I know a lot of people are just focused on sports, but pay attention to what's going on because we got to make sure that we keep everybody informed about what's going on more than just who won a game. I also want to pay homage to our veterans. We have a Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. They really do a great job. They're called first responders. You can pick up the phone and help anyone going through stress or issues. Call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can help people get some help. Touchdown Stephon Diggs after the Bills lost to the New England Patriots last night in about 50-mile-per-hour wind and snow gusts. He talked about some people that go through mental health needs. He's been in his own space. I've been in mine. A lot of people do. Sometimes you feel like the world is closed in on you, and that's okay. You just God will never, ever forsake you no matter what people do. And when he talked about that, athletes go through a lot of things as well as anybody else in society. So that's why I love giving out our Veterans Crisis Hotline. It's not just for veterans. It's for anybody who's going through issues, and I'll give it one more time, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net and get our veterans some help. Give them praise. Give the Crisis Hotline some praise. Really appreciate Buffalo Bills superstar receiver touchdown Stephon Diggs when he talked about people need to get their checkup from the neck up. It's all fair in love and war. Sometimes people don't think that they have anyone to reach out to, but they do. Also want to say very happy to be affiliated with Xfinity, Comcast TV, Comcast Spotlight Effect TV for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. It's like a Genesis 1-3. God said let there be light. Open yourself over to say play Big C Sports Podcast. You can see our app pop up all over the world. Really do appreciate that. And I want to say I love my affiliation with real estate with valleyhomesweekly.com. Also, the nationalrealestatepost.com if you want to know what's going on in your neck of the woods. Also, for going around the country to find out what's going on with mortgage rates in your neck of the woods, go to mortgagedailynews.com. That's mortgagedailynews.com. Or if you have more information, just call 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. And just tell them that Big C sent you. It's all fair in level world to find out more about what's going on with real estate in your neck of the woods. Also, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world of betting. Remember, guys call every single morning. Hey, I got the great numbers on this game. In fact, it was, I believe, last night on Monday Night Football, it was sponsored by T-Mobile, and they had the fans choose who was going to win the New England game and the Buffalo game. Would you believe that most fans that they had surveyed, they said that Buffalo would win that game last night? Would you believe that? Bill Belichick said, I don't listen to surveys. All I do is do my own surveys. That's all fair level work. But New England had a different story, and you see why Bill Belichick's a great coach. But for you bettors out there, be careful. Never bet more than you can afford to lose, because they always tell you they have a great deal, and they have such a great record of winning. They want to share some of the money they could win with you. It's all fair and level war. I want to say, sports fans, when you're watching the big game, you want to make sure that you have Budweiser Zero. They have 0% alcohol, but it's 100% honest game. Sports fans, when you're watching the big game, you want to eat it with the Big C Burger. It's a tasty burger, and it comes with, what's all this exotic meat? Well, Buffalo's exotic meat, right? They had some buffalo last night. New England doesn't love, the Patriots love the exotic meat of buffalo served on ice. It's all fair and level. Well, what a great game last night. If you love defense, I'm going to talk more about that too. Have some stuff coming up on NBA basketball and how the power rankings are coming together. But I want to just get into what happened last night in the NFL. I know there's talk about should we have everyone playing a dome stadium. And up there near Niagara Falls, you can see the falls pouring, and the wind was blowing about 50 miles per hour. And it was hard to kick a field goal because it would blow to your left or to your right, which is not supposed to happen when you kick a field goal. But they had those wind gusts last night up to 50 miles per hour. And some people think, should we even allow the NFL to play in that type of weather? New England with a 14-10 win over the Buffalo Bills. And that was Mac Jones with the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick. And they went into Buffalo, got a win that not many people thought they could pull off. But that's the thing about Coach Bill Belichick. He's found a way to keep winning. Last year, they had a lot of players sit out because of COVID, and they didn't have their whole assortment of players. But this time, he got a lot of people back that were not there last year. And for anyone who doubts the coaching ability of the great touchdown stopper Bill Belichick, you got to keep in mind, New England Patriots' favorite one particular play. It was called the G lead against the Buffalo Bills in a 14-10 win on Monday night. They did it over and over and over again. Mac Jones had 3 passes. He was 2 of 3 passing. 1 was a screenplay. But offensive coordinator, when you think about it, it was Josh McDaniels liked the play so much that he called it over and over again. It's amazing how during the game, the wind gusts up to about 50 to 60 miles per hour and a steady blow of about 28 miles per hour. So New England steered clear of the rookie quarterback, Mac Jones. And they drafted this guy number 1 to throw the ball 3 times because defense does win championships. You think about this. How many quarterbacks are getting, what's the guy for Josh Allen for Buffalo? I think his contract's $250 million. And he was outperformed by a quarterback that did not get $250 million, but he threw the ball 3 times. Think about that. Not that he was outperformed, but he came up on the losing end. I thought Buffalo should have thrown the ball more than they did last night. But New England steered clear of all the mistakes that a rookie quarterback could have made, who never played in such foul weather coming from Alabama. In his high school career in Jacksonville, down in the heat and humidity of Florida, and also for the Crimson Tide with the great Nick Saban. But the Patriots, they hammered the football. I think John McKay said it's not too heavy, former USC coach. But think about this. Running backs galore, 222 yards rushing. New England did not need much variety in his run game. They just pounded the ball away. Kind of like 3 yards in a cloud of dust, the old ways of the Woody Hayes days of the Big Ten. And when you think about it, so many people, they want to spend so much money on big-time quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford. Is he going to make a difference for the Rams? Well, the Rams have lost more games. They just finally got back on the winning streak, but they had lost 3 in a row. And if you were to ask me right now, I think Mac Jones, they put up a stat, he's being more successful, 70% completion rate, than all the other quarterbacks that were top-notch and drafted above him, from Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, etc. And so when you think about some of the things that happened in that game last night, they went into Buffalo on a Monday night. They needed to get a win. Although it wasn't a pretty win, they did get a win. I think what really set the tone, they went for 2. This is Bill Belichick again. They went for 2 when they scored their first touchdown. I think it was a 56-yard run. And they went for a 2-point conversion instead of the PAT. Well, later Buffalo came down and tried to score, and they ended up kicking a field goal that sailed wide right because the wind was blowing so hard. So it was a game that New England Patriots running back, they knew they had to hold onto the ball with 2 hands and just run north and south. The weather conditions, not ideal at all. They focused on running the football and resulted in an easy night for Mac Jones just throwing the ball 3 times, who was able to complete low-risk, high-efficiency passes to move the ball. I was actually surprised when they did have an extra pass late in the fourth quarter with about 7 minutes to play. But in addition to the offensive side of the ball, the defense played lights out last night, had a goal line stand against Buffalo twice, as well as they were just able to control the run game for Buffalo. They were able to lock down Buffalo's best weapons as the Patriots, they tightened their grip on the AFC East Championship. And I'm thinking about, I think they showed a stat that the New York Jets had played in the game way about back in the 60s, I believe, when there was only 3 pass attempts. But the quarterback, Mac Jones, threw 3 passes the entire game. He went 2 of 3 for 19 yards. And the Patriots only attempted 1 pass in the first half. That's something that had not been done in over 30 years. Jones' longest pass of the evening, it was only 12 yards. And that was the tight end, Junu Smith, and his other completion went to running back Brandon Bolden for a 7-yard gain. And that was New England's primarily running football team last night. This is like football way back in the Delaware Wing T days where you don't have to pass it. Jones made the most of his passing opportunities because he did not cough it up He even got chewed out one time late in the fourth quarter with about a minute and a half to play. He called the timeout. You can see Bill Belichick saying, "Timeout? What do you call a timeout for you?" Blah, 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 blah. You know, that you can see that going through his lips. Maybe his lips are just shivering in the cold. But think about this. Something about the threes. 222 rushing yards. 222 rushing yards. Think about that. The Patriots focused on the running game on Monday, and it worked to perfection. They totaled 222 rushing yards on the ground, as well as a touchdown. They ran the ball 46 times. There are times when you contrast that. There are quarterbacks in the NFL that throw the ball 46 times in a game. New England ran it 46 times. A winning formula with a great defense. They primarily got their production from running back Damian Harris and Rodmar Stevenson. When you think about how well they run the ball inside the tackles and outside too on the sweep plays, the ball 10 times for 100. Think about it. 10 times for 111 yards and a touchdown. Stevenson carried the ball 24 times, 78 yards. Bolden also, I think he had 4 carries for 28 yards. It didn't matter who had the ball. It was kind of running like running backs by committee. One of the biggest plays of the game was Harris' 64-yard sprint to the end zone where he only had to beat the safety who overran the play and raced it 64 yards for a touchdown to the opening score of the game, and it set the tone for the evening. But think about that 2-point conversion that New England went for. How would people have known that would have made a difference in the game? Because it made all the difference in the game. It made Buffalo have to go for a touchdown as opposed to kicking a field goal and maybe trying to tie that thing or even win it in the end. So it seems like another stat that you don't think about too much is the turnover stat. There was 0 turnovers. No, there was 1 turnover. 1 turnover, and it seemed like one of the more obvious stats. The Patriots had 1 turnover on the evening and 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts, and the temperatures down inside the 20s. It's just an amazing atmosphere. It's amazing people live in that mess. But Jones and the Patriots did not throw an interception on Monday night, which is certainly noteworthy. And taking care of the football was an important aspect of the game for the Patriots. They were able to have a low-risk, kind of a high-reward game plan. And wasn't great football, and maybe some people turned away from the TV, but some people like the defensive battles, and that's what we had last night. Buffalo, time and time again, especially in the fourth quarter, going against the wind, that's when they let Josh Allen throw the football more. He actually had more completions against the wind than he did with the wind at his back. So I thought Buffalo was a bit out-coached last night. Reminded me of Pete Carroll running for it on 2nd and goal from the 1-yard line by Beast Mode against the Patriots. Same Bill Belichick back in the Super Bowl back in the day. But Buffalo's able to pass the ball a little bit better on Monday night, throwing. They had 131 yards passing compared to 19. And they lost the game. It's because of New England's ability to take care of the football and limit Buffalo's in terms of having the chances to score. There's so many things you got to look at when you look at New England Patriots and Bill Belichick, where that goes back to the tuck rule when they beat the Raiders. And I thought that was a joke of a play. I mean, everybody has their own thoughts about it. Tom Brady back to pass. The ball was stripped as he was throwing the ball, and the hand wasn't coming forward. And the Raiders said it was a fumble. The people in New England said no, the ball was going forward. Either way, it was just one of those games that New England found a way to win again. And that's just because they're able to win a game like this where no one picked them to even make the... I mean, some people said they wouldn't be a playoff team. I always thought they'd be a playoff team, but I didn't know if they would win the division. I actually had Buffalo winning the division. And when they had Cam Newton, I said, okay, if they got Cam, they're going to win the division. Well, Cam's down in Carolina now, and Mac Jones is doing his thing for New England. So maybe a lot of people were wrong when it comes to football. But for the Buffalo Bills, what a great crowd to weather that fans. The fans, it wasn't lightning storm, but it was thunder. So give the Buffalo Bills Mafia, give them a lot of praise for turning out in that kind of game. So they lost. That crowd was amazing. Freezing cold, but they still found a way to cheer their team on, even though they lost. All fair and love and war. Going to run through the 2021 NFL playoff picture in the standings through week 13. And the Patriots are the number 1 team in the AFC East. Isn't that something? I mean, who would have thought that? Everyone was saying Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. It's all fair and love and war. So the playoff race is getting a little bit more hard to gauge now. And there's a division by division. I just want to run by some teams to see what we have here. We have Washington has emerged into the NFC playoff race as winners of 4 straight games, taking over the number 6 seed after being left out of the playoff hunt but now they've got the groove back. 12 teams remain over 500 in the AFC. The Miami Dolphins looking to make it 13 in about 2 weeks and a bye at week 14. That's going to help the Dolphins having a bye at week 14 in a 17-game season. The New England Patriots took over first place in the conference with a big victory on Monday night over the Buffalo Bills. Going to just look at some of the teams right now in the AFC East. New England Patriots, they are 9-4 on the season. Isn't that amazing? They are an absolutely amazing team. And their win difference, plus 150. Buffalo Bills, they're 7-5, number 2 in the AFC East. And their win percentage is plus 140. Think about that. The Miami Dolphins, 6-7 on the season. They're trying to get to a 500 mark. And their win difference is minus 34 points. The Jets are only 3-9, but hey, that's better than Detroit's record. And their win difference is minus 150 as far as being outscored by opponents. I want to look at the New England Patriots. They took over the number 1 seed in the AFC with a huge win over Buffalo. And New England leads Tennessee, Baltimore, and Kansas City by a half game in the conference standing as the Patriots head into the bye week. So that's going to help a lot, just knowing that they can rest team. They can't really rest, but the fact that they do have a game and a half lead over Buffalo. Now, remaining schedule with the bye week at the Colts versus Buffalo again, and then the Jaguars and the Dolphins. Well, the only team with a winning record for New England going forward after the bye week is Buffalo, a team they just beat on the road. Buffalo, the Colts are right at 500. Jacksonville, they're not going to win maybe more than another 2 games this year if they even win that. And then the Dolphins are going to try to get to 500. But you got to have a lot of hope if you're New England that you're going to win that AFC East. And also for Buffalo, the loss to New England put Buffalo on the number 7 seed in the AFC, just a half game ahead of Pittsburgh from being out of the playoffs. Think about that. The Bills lose the conference record tiebreaker to Los Angeles, number 5 seed, the Chargers, and then Cincinnati, number 6 seed. The remaining schedule at the Buccaneers versus the Panthers, at the Patriots, and then versus the Falcons and Jets. They're probably not going to beat Tampa Bay. The game against the Panthers, maybe they'll get that win. But are they going to beat New England when they go into Foxborough? Probably not. Look at the Miami Dolphins. They have won 5 in a row, getting back to the playoff race. They still have a lot of work to do. Miami's 13th in the AFC standing. They have a bye week. Then they versus the Jets, at the Saints, at the Titans, and then versus the Patriots. So you can see Miami beating the Jets, not beating the Saints, or maybe they will. They're all banged up down south. At Tennessee, not so sure. And then versus the Patriots, doubt it. Even though Miami beat them early in the season when the Patriots turned the ball over right around in the red zone, right around the 10-yard line. Now, the New York Jets, they're the 14th in the conference and are in position to have the number 4 pick in the draft, and that's what they're looking for. They have games against the Saints and at the Dolphins, the Jaguars at home, the Buccaneers at home, and then at the Bills at the end of the year. In the AFC North, a team that everyone thought was playoff ready, of course, but maybe even Super Bowl ready this year. That's the Baltimore Ravens. They were 8-4 on the season. Everybody's banged up for the Baltimore Ravens. They have a lot of issues just trying to keep people healthy. But look at their record, 8-4 in the season. They haven't played the best. Their point differential is plus 22 in the season. Won a lot of low-scoring games lately outside of that loss to Pittsburgh. And then the Bengals are 7-5. They're up and down. You never know what you're going to get out of Cincinnati. But their differential in scoring is plus 64. The Steelers, Tomlin's never finished under 500. But now he might this year because we have 17 games. So he's not going to go. Maybe he goes 8-9 this year. Or could he go 9-8? You never know. They're 6-5 on the season. Actually 6-5-1. And their differential in points is minus 42. So they've been outscored. And that's why they're 6-5-1. The Browns are 6-6. So many people said this is this year that the Cleveland Browns would win the AFC. That this would be a Super Bowl team. Just hasn't happened. Odell Beckham Jr. is now in Los Angeles. And Baker Mayfield has a bum shoulder. And the defense is still playing well, especially Myles Garrett. But their difference in point total is minus 13. They expected a lot more coming into the season. Baltimore, they stay in first place in the AFC. Thanks to Cincinnati falling to the Los Angeles Chargers in a blowout fashion. But 3 teams in the AFC North are separated by 1 game. And since the Ravens beat the Chiefs, they have the number 3 seed in the conference. They don't play a team under 500 for the rest of the year. And Harbaugh said they're already banged up. They're at Cleveland. Most likely will beat Cleveland. And then they're versus the Green Bay Packers coming in to Baltimore I'm going to give Green Bay the edge in that one. But you never know. It depends on how well Lamar Jackson plays. They're at Cincinnati. Most likely will beat Cincinnati. And then versus the Rams back in the cold. So I'm going to give them that win later in the year because it's going to be cold when they play the Rams coming across the East Coast. And then versus the Steelers, maybe a revenge game where they get the Steelers. Okay, so maybe they'll win that. Cincinnati, the loss to the Los Angeles Chargers, that keeps the Bengals out of the AFC North lead. It was right there in their hands. But they scored double digits. They fell to number 6 seed in the AFC, and they're just a half game ahead of Pittsburgh for the final playoff spot. It's all fair and love and war, but that's a team that you can't really count on anyway, no matter what they do. The loss to the Chargers cost Cincinnati possession of the number 5 seed in the AFC in the head-to-head tiebreaker. Now, the remaining schedule, they're at the 49ers. Give that a 49er win. If you watch what New England did for Shanahan, just run the football. You don't have to throw downfield. Just run it, short passing game, 5 and 10 yard out, and you'll have a chance to win because their defense is still legit in San Francisco. And then they're at the Broncos. They're versus the Ravens. And then they're versus the Chiefs. And then at the Browns. That's a tough schedule for Cincinnati. Who knows if they'll even get into the playoffs. Pittsburgh Steelers, this would be weird if Mike Tomlin didn't make the playoffs. They're back in the playoff hunt with a big victory over the Ravens. It's Pittsburgh's number 8 seed in the AFC. Just a half game behind Buffalo in the final playoff spot for the conference. So you got to keep your head in the game for the Steelers. Remaining schedule at the Vikings, that should be a win. The Vikings couldn't even beat Detroit, but neither could Pittsburgh. They tied them. But I'm going to say Tomlin has that crew more ready to play than the Vikings at this time. And then they have the Titans. Are they going to win that game? That's in Pittsburgh? I don't really know. We'll have to see how they do it against the Vikings. They're at the Chiefs. They're going to lose the game at the Chiefs. They're versus the Browns. Probably beat the Browns. And most likely will lose at the Ravens at the end of the year. Cleveland Browns, they were off the week and are 11th in the conference. 1 game out of the final playoff spot. Have a lot of injuries in Cleveland on their offense. They own a head-to-head tiebreaker over the Broncos. The remaining schedule for Cleveland versus the Ravens. Go with the Baltimore in that one. And then versus the Raiders, who've forgotten how to win. Man, I still say the Raiders got to get a win, but they got to go on the road to play them. So the Raiders probably won't win in Cleveland later in the year when it's really cold. At Green Bay, Cleveland's going to lose that game at the Packers. At the Steelers, go with the Steelers. And then the game versus Cincinnati, that's for the Battle of Ohio. Who knows? It's all fair level war with that one. In the AFC South, look at the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, when they lost touchdown Derrick Henry, a lot of people thought they were going to fall off, but they're still 8-4. They're not the same kind of team, though. And their differential in scoring is plus 14. But they did get that big blowout loss to New England earlier, or just a few weeks ago. So that kind of puts a lot of damper on how strong they are. The Colts, they're 7-6. They got their groove back. If they run the ball, they'll be fine. They're 7-6. Their point differential is plus 88. The Texans, 2-10, just having a bad organization all around. And they're minus 159 in the point total differential. They just don't have it. Deshaun Watson not being there, and a lot of other things went wrong. J.J. Watt left. A lot of things just left Houston. The Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 pick, 2-10 on the season. Point differential, 140. Minus 140. They've been outscored by everyone. So they don't have a lot to look forward to other than trying to draft again. It doesn't mean the number 1 draft is going to do anything for you. You're just kind of in a rebuilding mode. The Tennessee Titans, the Titans were off this weekend. They're the number 2 seed in the AFC with the Patriots beating the Bills. Tennessee holds the tiebreaker over Baltimore. We'll see what happens with them. The remaining schedule versus the Jaguars, that's a win. At the Steelers, I don't know yet. Depends on what happens with the Steelers and the Vikings. Versus the 49ers, I'm going to go with the 49ers winning that game if they can run the ball. And then the Dolphins, man, that's a toss-up game at the end of the season. And then at the Texans. So we'll see what happens with Tennessee. They'll beat the Texans. Now, Indianapolis Colts, they get back to over 500 with a shutout win over the Texans as they head into the bye week. Indianapolis is the number 9 seed in the AFC, a half game out of the final playoff spot. The remaining schedule, they have a bye week, which they really need. Then they're versus the Patriots. They're going to lose to the Patriots. They're at the Cardinals. They're going to lose to the Cardinals. They're versus the Raiders. They'll most likely win a game versus the Raiders in Indianapolis. And then at the Jaguars at the end of the season, they'll most likely win that one. Houston, what do you know about Houston? They're eliminated from the playoffs, and they play the Seahawks at home, at the Jaguars, versus the Chargers, at the 49ers, and versus the Titans. I don't think they'll win any of those games outside I mean, they still got to go to the Jaguars. That's on the road. They may not win any more games this year, and we'll see what happens. If you think about the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're at least in the AFC, and they're currently slated to have a second round overall pick in the draft next year. The remaining schedule at the Titans versus the Texans, at the Jets, at the Patriots, and versus the Colts. In the AFC West, this division has been dominated over the last several years by the Kansas City Chiefs, 3 AFC championship games in a row, and I thought they were cheated out of the first one when they, well, you can't blame the officials for everything. Maybe you can if you live in Kansas City. But the Chiefs, they're 8-4. And do they look like an 8-4 team? Not really. The last couple of weeks, yes. The win over Dallas, the win over the Raiders, and then this win over Denver, they won, but it wasn't impressive. Just like New England's win wasn't impressive over over Buffalo last night, but they still got the win. The point differential is plus 44 over their opponents. The Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers, 7-5 on the season. They've scored fewer points than their opponents, -1 on the point differential, but they're 7-5 on the season. Isn't that something? The Raiders, so that means when the Chargers win, they win big, and they lose lose big. It's all fair level war. 7-5 still a good record. The Raiders, they're 6-6 on the season. They've been in a kind of just not playing good football. Too many things have happened with that organization. They're -38 in the point scoring. The Broncos are 6-6. Not a bad conference for the AFC West. They're 6-6, last place right now, tied with the Raiders, and their point differential is plus 19 in that category. So you look at them, they've outscored most of their opponents by 19 points, but they're only 500 on the season. Kansas City, the Chiefs remain in first place in the AFC West. They win over the Broncos. Kansas City loses to Baltimore, or they lost to Baltimore and also Tennessee, and why the Chiefs are the number 4 seed in the conference standings, even though, they all have good teams. The main thing about Kansas City, the remaining schedule, versus the Raiders that have played them close over the past couple of years. But I think Kansas City wins that game. I think the Raiders are kind of throwing in the towel. Throw in the towel! In the great movie Rocky. And then they're at the Chargers. You can't take anything for granted at the Chargers at SoFi Stadium. The Chiefs may have more fans, but the Chargers are playing some good football. Then they're versus the Steelers. They'll beat the Steelers. They're at Cincinnati. They'll beat Cincinnati. And then at Denver at the end of the year, will they beat the Broncos? They probably should. I think they've turned things around offensively. A team that I really like the way they played, especially went across the country, and I said they beat them, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Thunderbolts, my goodness, Justin Joe Herbert, they can play. They are a very good team. A huge win over the Bengals. The Chargers at the number 5 seed in the AFC, now on the head-to-head tiebreaker over Cincinnati, have a better conference record over Buffalo. The Chargers are still a game behind Kansas City for the division lead, but only a half game ahead of Pittsburgh from being out of the playoffs. So they're going to keep winning. They just got to keep playing with Justin Herbert more consistent. When they win well. When they lose, they say, how in the world that happened? Remaining schedule, they'll beat the Giants at home. I think they will. The Chiefs, don't know about that one. Just can't pick that one yet. They're at the Texans, they'll win that one. Versus the Broncos, they should win. And at the Raiders, man, they should win, but those two teams go back and forth. Have a long history of it from the Holy Roller. Las Vegas Raiders, my goodness, a tough loss to Washington at beautiful Allegiant Stadium. The Raiders are still out of the postseason. Vegas is a game out in 10th in the conference standings. They'll have a tiebreaker over the Browns in the conference record, and the Broncos head-to-head win. They face the Browns and Broncos in 2 of their next 3 games. Man, this team might finish under 500. I feel for the Raiders. They have a remaining schedule at Kansas City. I know they played well at Arrowhead, but it seems like they've given up. They're at the Browns. That's a cold game going back to the East. And then versus Denver, they couldn't even hold on to Washington at home. Who knows? At Indianapolis, that's a loss. Then versus the Chargers, I just don't feel confident about the Raiders. They don't seem to have that punch anymore that they had at the beginning of the season. Denver Broncos, a tough loss to the Chiefs, put the Broncos 2 games out of the division lead, making the best possible way into the playoffs by the wild card. Denver is a game out of the final playoff spot, 12th in the conference, thanks to losses to the Raiders and Cleveland this year. Remaining schedule. It's important to know for Denver, still 6-6. They're versus the Lions. That's a win. Don't overlook them, but that should be a win. Sponsored by the Big C Burger, Tasty Burger, and it comes with what's all those exotic meats, and a lion and a bronco are exotic meats. Now, the Bengals, I mean, I don't know how to pick that one. They're ups and down, too. At the Raiders, I mean, they have a 50-50 chance throughout the season. And then at the Chargers and versus the Chiefs, they're going to lose to the Chiefs. All's fair and love and war. There's so much football to love, and I love cheering on the AFC and the NFC. Now we're going to look at some of the teams on the NFC because they are also loaded in the NFC East. Dallas Cowboys, 8-4. Their win differentials plus 86. They've outscored their opponents by 86 points. That's a lot when you think about what those good old boy Cowboys have done over the years. I mean, in Dallas, everything is big, as they always say, how about them Cowboys? They always want to go, how about them Cowboys, as they've done a good job of winning games this season. Dak Prescott coming back to have a great season after the injury he had last year. But the 8-4, the win differential is 86, or plus 86. Washington, surprising a lot of people that don't lay down on the Washington football team. Their point differentials minus 51. They've been outscored. Think about that. The Eagles are 6-7. And their point differential is plus 46. Jalen Hurts is still the quarterback, even though Gardner Minshew had a good game. I don't know why Jacksonville let him go. I mean, he could have been a backup still, if that makes sense to you. And maybe, I know they felt pressure to start Trevor Lawrence, but look at Gardner Minshew out of Washington State. I think it would have been a good fit if they kept him on the roster. But when you draft someone number one, there was so much pressure to get Trevor Lawrence out there and make him the star of the organization. But sometimes it's best to let the guy learn, too. It's okay. The Giants, 4-8. Their point differential is minus 62. Now, when you get with the Cowboys remain 2 games ahead of Washington for first place in the NFC East, thanks to the Raiders giving up that field goal at the end of the game with 2 of their next 3 games against the football team. And they sit number 4 in the NFC standings and have a head-to-head loss to Tampa Bay, 3rd in the conference. Remaining schedule for the Cowboys at Washington, that's not a gimme game. But I think the Cowboys win it. At the Giants, that's a win. Versus Washington again, should be a win. Versus the Cardinals, might be a loss. At the Eagles at the end of the year, should be a win. Just an opinion. Washington football team, a win over the Raiders, has Washington number 6 in the NFC playoff with a tiebreaker over San Francisco. For now, better win percentage in conference games. Washington is not out of the NFC race yet. Playing the Cowboys twice in the next 3 weeks might make it tough, though. And talked about that remaining schedule versus the Cowboys. And then at Philadelphia, at Dallas again, versus the Eagles again, and at the Giants. So can you split some of those games? Maybe. We'll see. Philadelphia Eagles, they stay alive in the NFC playoff race with a win over the Jets. And they head into their bye week. Half of their game behind Washington. And then a number 6 spot, and also a half game behind San Francisco for the number 7 spots. Both teams have the same records. But the Eagles lost head-to-head to the 49ers earlier in the year in Philadelphia, but they play the football team in Washington in 3. I think it's going to be coming out of the bye week, so you're going to play them twice. It's all fair and level war. What a great playoff march we're having in the NFL. Remaining schedule versus Washington, versus the Giants at Washington, and then versus the Cowboys. A lot of NFC East competition. The New York Giants, they're not going anywhere. They're 13th in the NFC standings, 2 games out of the final playoff spot. They hold the tiebreaker over the Bears and Seahawks, but that's about all you can say about them. Remaining schedule at the Chargers, that's a loss. Versus the Cowboys, that's another loss. At the Eagles, that's another loss. At the Bears, maybe a win. Versus Washington, that's last game of the year. Don't know how to pick that one yet. But I just don't know how to pick it. We'll have to see how they measure up. In the NFC North, a lot of people feel that the NFC North may just strike lightning this year. Green Bay Packers been to the last 2 NFC championship games. They're 9-3. They're over on, with the difference is plus 41 on the season. They have touchdown Aaron Rodgers. He'll do his thing. The Vikings 5-7. Kirk Cousins, they seem to have lost the mojo that they had, losing a lot of close games. Just losing that game to Detroit really hurts you when it comes to the playoffs. Their point differential is plus 3 on the year. The Bears 4-8. What are they going to do with Dalton? Justin Fields been banged up. Their differential in scoring is minus 86. So we know they're just a rebuilding team. The Lions are 1-10-1, and they're giving up 113 more than they've scored. The Green Bay Packers, the Packers were off this week. What a great time to be off. and getting healthy, especially with the toe of touchdown Aaron Rodgers. They remain the number 2 seed in the NFC after having a better conference record than Tampa. Green Bay's, if they win the NFC North with a win over the Bears, and the Vikings lost to the Steelers, and look at their schedule versus the Bears, that's a win. At the Baltimore Ravens, my goodness, that might be a win because Baltimore's banged up. And then they play the Browns, that's a win in Green Bay. And then they're versus the Vikings, that should be a win, a revenge win. And at the Lions, that should be a win. I don't see a team winning out, though. They may fall to the Ravens. But the Ravens are banged up. Green Bay has a chance to run the table. Minnesota Vikings, the playoff host, took a huge hit when they lost to the team in Detroit that was winless. Minnesota's on the outside looking in with the NFC. They fall to the number 9 seed at 5-7. It's all fair and love and war. The remaining schedule versus the Steelers. Don't know how to pick that game. Just don't know how to pick it yet. Minnesota versus the Steelers. I think that's a Super Bowl 8. I think that was played at Tulane Stadium. Maybe be wrong about that. Franco Harris, Terry Bradshaw, and then Fran Tarkenton for the Steelers, for the Vikings. Purple People Eater. Steelers won that game 16-8, I believe. And so they at the Steelers game at home. They're at the Bears. They're versus the Rams. At the Packers and versus the Bears again. We'll see how well they want to play football to close the season. Chicago Bears, they're the 14th in the conference standings. 2 games out of the final playoff spot. They're not going anywhere. Remaining schedule at the Packers versus the Vikings, at the Seahawks versus the Giants, and at the Vikings. Detroit got to win. And they got to win. They did a good thing in celebrating and giving money to some of the victims of the tragedy that happened in Michigan. So give them some praise for that. But they are Detroit. And not much more you can say about that. Remaining schedule at Denver versus the Cardinals, at the Falcons, at the Seahawks, and versus the Packers. They might find another win in there somewhere when they play at Atlanta, because Atlanta doesn't want to play good football right now. And we'll see what happens when they go to, I think that might be the only chance to win. Just a thought. NFC South Buccaneers, defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those good boys are playing some good football now. Now you see why so many people were held out, even with Antonio Brown on suspension and the 2 other players. They're 9-3 on the season. Their point differential is 107, so they're back in the saddle. The Panthers are 5-7. Carolina, with Cam Newton said he's back. You got to start winning, though, if they're going to start him. Their point differential is -17. The Falcons are 5-7. Their point differential is -116. It's too much money in Atlanta to be -116 in scoring differential. The Saints are 5-7, having all kind of quarterback issues. Their point differential is -2. I think for most people, they're going to say that Tampa Bay is going to win this division. It's just a matter of by how many games. NFL's tough football. But I look at Tampa Bay, for them, no one's going to challenge them. They're not going to be challenged by Carolina. They're not going to be challenged by the Saints. And they're not going to be challenged by the Falcons. So they have the inside track to making their dreams come true. And it's just a matter of how they do it, because they're such a good team. If you look at the Buccaneers, they can clinch the NFC South with a win over the Bills. That's going to be a tough game, but they should probably beat them. And the Panthers lose or tie to the Falcons, and the Saints lose or tie to the Jets. And they have the number 3 seed in the NFC, as Green Bay has a better conference record. And the remaining schedule for defending NFL champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Buffalo, that should be a win down at Raymond James. Then versus the Saints, they're banged up at quarterback. That should be a win. At Carolina, they have a good defense, but McCaffrey's out for the year. So that's going to maybe be a win. They're at the Jets, which should be a win. And then they have another game with the Panthers. They could also win out, but teams normally don't because they may rest the players. Carolina Panthers, the Panthers are 10th in the NFC standings after being idle this week. They lose head-to-head tiebreakers to Minnesota, yet they hold the head-to-head division tiebreakers over Atlanta and New Orleans. Remaining schedule for Carolina versus the Falcons, that's a win. At the Bills, might be a loss. Versus Tampa, that's a loss. At the Saints, depending on who plays quarterback for the Saints, to go on the road, maybe that's a win. At the Buccaneers, that's a loss unless Tampa decides to rest players at the end of the season. The Falcons, number 11 seed in the conference, have an uphill battle for the postseason. And think about it, Atlanta cannot be at number 9 since they lost the tiebreaker to Carolina, which lost the tiebreaker to Minnesota. Like, who's on first and who's on second? Who wants to even win a game? Remaining schedule at Carolina Panthers and the 49ers at the 49ers versus the Lions. They're at the Bills and the Saints. So Atlanta, I don't know if they'll win any of those games. Maybe they'll beat the Lions because they're home. All fair and level are New Orleans Saints. They're reeling in their 5th straight loss, falling to the 12th seed in the conference standings. man, they're banged up at quarterback. The remaining schedule at the Jets, that's a win. At Tampa, that's a loss. Versus the Dolphins, probably, man, Dolphins playing pretty good football lately. Maybe the Dolphins will win that game too. Versus the Panthers, they're just in a tough spot, New Orleans. I don't know how to pick them. Then they finish at Atlanta. NFC West, this is the division that has the best team in NFL football. Maybe. The Arizona Cardinals, they're 10-2 on the season. Their scoring differential is plus 119. They have a Hopkins back, Murray's back, quarterback receiver combo. The Rams 8-4. After a losing skid of 3 in a row, they got a win over Jacksonville. The point scoring differential is plus 66. So they're a playoff team. The 49ers are 6-6. Man, I thought they would beat Seattle last week. The point differential is plus 25. They just got to run the ball more. And I know they're banged up, but they're running by running. There's a gold in them their heels. Outside chance looking in. Seahawks 4-8, not going to make the playoffs. Their point differential is minus 10. Now, Arizona Cardinals, many people's best team in the NFL this year. The Cardinals are our only team in football with 10 wins right now and hold the number 1 seed in the NFC. Green Bay has a win over Arizona. Went down to the wire. It was an interception that sealed it for them, but the Packers are a game back. Arizona leads Los Angeles by 2 games in the NFC West and can really seal the division with a win next week. They're very strong. They have games versus the Rams. That's a win. At Detroit, that's a win. Versus the Colts, that's a win. At the Cowboys, that might be a loss later in the year. And then versus Seattle, that should be a win. The Rams are 2 games up on the playoff spot in the NFC. Hold the number 5 seed in the conference. They need a win over Arizona this week. That's not going to happen to stay in the title hunt. Not going to happen. Remaining schedule at the Cardinals, that's a loss. Versus the Seahawks, that's a win. At the Vikings, should be a win. At the Ravens, man, that might be a loss. And then versus the 49ers, kind of a revenge game, but they play each other well. And the 49ers have had the Rams record. They have their number of late. Maybe the 49ers need that game more and win that game at the end of the season. Now, the 49ers, Northern California's only team, the loss to Seattle really hurt. And the 49ers still hold the final playoff spot in the NFC, leading Philadelphia by a half game. And they beat the Eagles in week 2 back in Philadelphia. Washington owns a tiebreaker for the number 6 seed based on having a better win percentage in conference games, but I think the 49ers will catch them. Remaining game at Cincinnati, the 49ers will win that game. Their defense is better. And then versus the Falcons, that's a win. At Tennessee Titans, got to buckle up your chin straps. That might be an early game, but I think they can go back south and win. They've done it before. The Texans is a win in San Francisco, and they finish on the road with the Rams, and they've had the Rams record of late. Seattle is the 15th in the conference standing, losing conference tiebreakers to Chicago and New York. They're still 2 games out of the final playoff spot. They're not going to get in this year. Remaining schedule at the Texans, at the Rams, versus the Bears, versus the Lions, at the Cardinals. They'll beat the Texans. They'll lose to the Rams. They'll beat the Bears, and they'll beat the Lions, and they'll lose to the Cardinals. And that's the NFL Big C style as you come up on the end of the year for the playoff chase. There's a lot of good teams that are really getting their chest in the win. So I want to give up some praise for NFL football. Give it up some praise. Give them all praise. It's all fair in love and war. Going to come back with a little bit of NBA basketball tonight. There's a lot of good things going on in the world of NBA basketball. I know whether you are in the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference, there's just a lot of good basketball being played. I think the Eastern Conference has, top to bottom, I'm going to do the power rankings for tomorrow, but I think the Eastern Conference has a better win percentage over the Western Conference. There's not a lot of games tonight for Tuesday, December the 7th, but you have Brooklyn. They're down in the desert. Not in the desert. Dallas is not a desert. If anything, it's heat and humidity. But they're down in Texas, which could seem like desert when you're driving through some parts of it. But Brooklyn's already underway. The game's on TNT Live. They're at the Dallas Mavericks. You have the great Kevin Durant, great Luka Doncic, Porzingis, and we'll see if Harden can do his thing. I don't know who's going to win that game, but Brooklyn's very tough. Brooklyn probably has the edge, even though they're down in Texas. And you know, in Texas, sometimes they don't fight straight. They don't fight straight at times in Texas. You have the New York Knickerbockers at the San Antonio Spurs, also down in the desert. Dallas is a major city. San Antonio is also the Riverwalk, but it looks like desert driving through most of Texas. 5:30 p.m. tip-off already underway. And then there's a little bit of rumbling in Los Angeles. Boston Celtics at the LA Lakers. That game tipped off at 7 o'clock p.m. on the West Coast. And the Lakers just have not had a good season so far. I know everybody has their own thoughts about it. And LeBron and Vogel getting flack. Players need to do better. LeBron said that he and his teammates have to play better basketball. When asked about the scrutiny that the Lakers are facing, you're only facing scrutiny because the Lakers, they've won so much. When you think about it, it's a process. They've dealt with the COVID, the false positive, like LeBron James had, that cost them a game, but they won that game up in Sacramento. But they still have been through a lot of junk that the NBA, they are the marquee franchise of NBA basketball. Everybody knows that. And when things don't go well, there's always talk about how do we fix it in Los Angeles. What is the key for the Lakers? I don't really know the key for the Lakers right now, other than having to get healthy, because they're not going to win the Western Conference this year. That's Golden State. And maybe Phoenix. You can even look at Utah. Maybe even Denver. Maybe even the Clippers before you get to the Los Angeles Lakers. I know everybody has their own thoughts about LeBron James never missing out. They'll make the playoffs this year. You got Russell Westbrook. Carmelo Anthony, supposedly he's not playing tonight. He has a little abdominal illness, I guess. Maybe he ate some bad food. Should have had the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger, and it comes with, what's all this exotic meats? If players would eat more Big C burgers, they'd be all right. But I think the problem with the Lakers is not LeBron James. He's averaging 26 points a game. He's averaging 37 minutes a game. And that's through, he hasn't played a lot this year because of injuries, but through 12 games, still 26 points a game, you're going to get that out of King James. And then Anthony Davis, when he's out there on the floor, he averages about 36 minutes a game. He's dropping 24 points a game. He's played in 23 games. So he's always consistent, even though sometimes you just wonder if he's going to come up with a pull hamstring or whatever it may happen. But you got to count those minutes. And now, a guy who's been much maligned, but he gets better as the season gets longer and he understands the system. That's point guard Russell Westbrook. Out of 24 games, he's averaging about 36 minutes a game. And he's averaging 20 points. That's a lot for Westbrook when he comes to the Lakers, and he's automatically a third option behind LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But Westbrook still he's going to give you 36 minutes a game. He's going to drop 20 points. You got to look at what he does. His assist numbers. He's assisting about 8.6 per game. He also averages 8 rebounds a game. So he's not the best shooter at times. But I look at what he does, averaging 8 rebounds per game for Westbrook. If you can imagine having your point guard in there with the big guys and he's grabbing that many rebounds, he's not necessarily the problem. They just got to find the groove. Anthony Davis is averaging 10 rebounds a game. He's about 6 inches taller than Westbrook. And Westbrook's right there, the big guys. LeBron James averages 6 rebounds a game. Westbrook averages more rebounds per game than LeBron James, so he's attacking the boards. LeBron James is a small forward, if you can call that. But Westbrook's point guard, he gets his chest into the action. And then Carmelo Anthony, that's out tonight, they're going to maybe miss him. He's averaging 14 points a game, but Carmelo Anthony's still giving you 29 minutes a game out of 24 games, even though he's going to miss tonight. I think also when you look at Horton Tucker and the shooting guard, only played 11 games, puts about 29 minutes a game, averaging 10.6 points a game. It's all about how they can get their flow. They haven't had a flow this season. And the Lakers, because they are in Los Angeles, they're always going to get most of the attention no matter what's going on in the world of NBA. And there's a lot of people that want to focus on, are the Lakers doing everything right? Is it LeBron James' fault? Is it Westbrook's fault? Whose fault is it? It's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's just the league is a very difficult league. And you're not going to win every night. Even though you may be a TV favorite, and King James has done a lot over the years to get into the playoffs, whether it's Cleveland Whether it's Miami, back to Cleveland, now Los Angeles, wherever LeBron James goes is must-see TV. And they'll find their groove. Stella got a groove back on the show back in the day. And they'll find their groove. The Lakers, you got to wait until after the Christmas break to see what happens with these teams. Even coming into next year after the All-Star break, things have to settle down. And they will settle down. As you stay healthy, you start getting the benefit of the call. I think the Lakers will be fine. And that's my NBA thoughts. And I'm sticking with it. It's all trend level war. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. And he would always tell Ali, you flow like a butterfly. You sting like a bee. You rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? And Ali would say, I'm pretty. I'm so fast, I can't possibly be beat. With all these big cheeseburgers in my tummy, it makes me light on my feet. That's why I'm always rumbling, man. I'm yumming, rumbling. You got to rumble too in life. When life throws you curveballs, just keep rumbling. My beautiful mother always says that's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, pick up the phone and ask for help. Because no man, woman, or child will ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you. We appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.